We are joined with Thrity Umrigar from Ohio in the United States. Thrity is the best-selling author of a memoir and six novels. Her new novel, which is Everybody's Son, will be published in 2017, and that's also when her first children's book, which is When I Carried You in My Belly, will also be out. Thrity is the Armington Professor of English at Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland. Thrity, welcome to LitFestx.
Thank you, Kumar. Lovely to be here.
So, Thrity, your latest novel is an interesting one. It is about an ill-educated, sort of recent Indian immigrant to the U.S. and her African American therapist. Tell us a little bit about this one before we get into the wider subject of our topic today.
Yeah, so basically, that's a good summary. It's a novel about the very sort of unlikely friendship that springs up between Lakshmi, who is a recent immigrant to the US. She's only been there for about 6 years, and Maggie, her African American therapist. The two sort of they move in very different walks of life. Lakshmi is in a pretty loveless arranged marriage to a guy who owns a grocery store and a restaurant somewhere in the Midwest. And when the novel opens, we find out that Lakshmi has attempted suicide only because of sort of the sheer bleakness of her life in the United States. In India, she grows up in a village where she's one of the most popular members. She has family, there's storytelling, there's color and vibrancy and life. And her life in the United States is a sharp contrast, to what she has known. And anyway, so she's taken to the hospital and Maggie is assigned to her case. And what Maggie realizes very quickly is that what Lakshmi really needs is not conventional, talk therapy, which after all is a very Western middle-class concept. But what Lakshmi really needs is two things. She needs friendship and she needs a kind of economic independence. She needs to find her own voice outside of her marriage. And that's how sort of the relationship between the two women develops. And what we realize as the novel goes on is that Maggie needs what Lakshmi has to offer every bit as much as the other way around. So that in a nutshell is the novel.
Wow. And you mentioned about talk therapy, and when we are talking about telling our own story, clearly there is a huge element of counseling, friendship, camaraderie that can come into talk therapy, and as well as your concept of the story arc. So I'm really waiting to hear more about that from you.
Yeah, so when I was writing the book, there were two. I think every novel begins with a question, or perhaps a series of questions that the author then attempts to answer. And for me, there were two questions that I was concerned with in the course of this novel. The first was simply, what does it mean to offer conventional talk therapy to a person whose cultural background, whose class background is so different that the very concept of therapy is an alien one, So despite poor Maggie's best attempts to sort of rein in their sessions and to, keep that objective distance, etc., Lakshmi unwittingly just sort of breaks down all those barriers. Because what she begins to see those sessions as is time to, quote unquote, make friendship. She just thinks they are developing friendship. And if you think about it, the fastest, easiest, and possibly the only way that one cultivates a new friendship is by telling your story, So that was one thing that intrigued me. Like, what do you do when there are these cultural barriers to basically, as I said earlier, a Western middle class concept? The other thing that I was very interested in exploring in this book is the whole act of storytelling. Because if you really break down what therapy ultimately is, it is, telling your life story and telling your life story over and over again, until hopefully some change occurs and some kind of transformation happens. So, in the course of the novel, Maggie's chapters are told in sort of the omniscient narrative, third person voice. Um, Lakshmi talks to us directly, almost as if she's looking at a camera and facing the camera and telling her life story. So she talks to us in the first person very directly. Um, and basically, as she's telling Maggie her story, she's also telling the reader her story. And I was intrigued by this act of storytelling because ultimately I just believe as a writer that we are our stories. That is what sort of defines who all of us are. So I was interested in exploring this sort of value, the therapeutic value of storytelling, while at the same time having one of the characters basically perform or enact the act of storytelling. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's what I was going for.
Sure. So let's talk a little bit more about the value of storytelling. Both from the storyteller's perspective. When you talk about it being of therapeutic value. So one is the storyteller, and then is the model really about one-on-one storytelling, or are you even talking about groups as well?
Well, certainly storytelling can work in groups. I mean, in the US, I travel quite frequently to do book readings and book talks before audiences. And inevitably, there are numerous people during the question and answer session who will basically get up and do what I call testifying, where they will tell some aspect of their own life story, most of the time relating it to the novel, whatever novel I'm reading from, in one way or the other. Sometimes they will simply talk about what the novel has meant to them in their lives and how it has affected them, made them sort of understand or see one aspect of their life more clearly, perhaps even changed them a little bit. And of course, I have to tell you that when a reader says something like that to you in person or by email, where something that you've written has really struck a chord, I mean, that is better than any prize, any award, any book advance in the world, because ultimately that is what, to me, any form of art, but especially literature, is all about. It's making those human connections. And sometimes you do it one on one, and sometimes, if you're very lucky, you do it in a whole group.
That's a very excellent point there, Thrity. What about then the whole business of blogging and microblogging, Twitter? Do you think that is also an avenue for people to tell their stories?
I suppose so. I'm puzzled by Twitter more than anything else. I like to talk, so for me, 140 characters just like put a gun to my head. I do use it on occasion, but not regularly. I don't blog only because I have a day job, as you mentioned. I teach at a university, and I'm always scrambling to find time to write my books. So that doesn't leave too many extra hours. I mean, there's that lovely thing called sleep, which I like to indulge in every once in a while. So, in the old days, we used to say you can either talk about writing a book or you can write a book, right? And sometimes I feel like people who spend all their time blogging and doing social media, maybe that's the modern equivalent of talking your book rather than actually writing it. And to be honest with you, I mean, I'm not at all knocking writers who, are very active on social media. I am too. I do a lot of Facebook stuff, that kind of stuff. But it's always time away from your real job, which is to produce another book.
Right. You said something interesting about people either talking about writing a book or
Right.
simply doing it. Now
Right.
I have a submission to make. I am in the category of people talking about writing a book, and I've been talking about it since 2008. Right, so
Wow.
it's 8 years,
Yes.
and I've written one page, which is
One
just,
page.
yeah, one Microsoft
Yeah.
Word, page, which is just,
Right.
basically filled with random bullets on ideas on
Right.
what the subject of the book, or rather books. So there are several books that I want to write. Look at
Right.
look at the audacity. So
Nothing audacious about it. It's
so
ambitious. Change the way you think about it.
Right. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, as things stand right now, there are about 8 or 9 book ideas on that one page, and I
Okay.
haven't moved after that. That file sits on my laptop, and I look at it, every week or 10 days, and I'm like, yeah, I will get to it. So I'm
Yeah.
sure you get asked this question a lot. How do you get that discipline, and how do you sit and write a book?
Yeah, yeah. No, you're right. This question comes up a great deal. In fact, sometimes just to be funny, I'll ask for a show of hands when I'm speaking before a large audience. And, first like 5 hands go up and then 10, and then half the audience has, the ambitions to write a book. So the first thing I say to people in that situation is, don't write the book. I never encourage them to write it. I say, don't write it. um, you can have a perfectly happy, productive life without ever writing a book, right? You can spend time with your kids. I mean, writing a novel is a giant time suck, right? So don't write it. Don't feel guilty about it. Tear up that single sheet of paper, throw away those 8 or 9 ideas, have a happy, long, productive, healthy life. But but if you are the kind of writer where it keeps nagging at you, where you feel like what would make you happiest in your life is to carve some time out of the 24-hour day, then by all means, write. It's not a question of discipline. People always say, where do I get the discipline to write? It's not discipline, it's passion, it's love. You don't need discipline to eat chocolate. You don't need discipline to give somebody a kiss. You don't need discipline to fall in love. You just need passion. Um, if you have that passion, you're going to do it. You may not do it today, you may not do it tomorrow, but eventually you will write your book. The thing to remember is you and I both have 24 hours in a day. You know, God didn't come down from heaven and give me 26 hours each day. So it's just a matter of time management, right? It's a matter of sacrifice. It's a matter of don't watch TV for 5 years and take that time instead. When everybody else in your family is watching TV, you slip away and you write a few pages. Most books, I'll just talk about fiction for a minute. Most books of fiction are anywhere from, 300 to 350 pages. Do the math. If you can just write 5 pages a day or 10 pages a day, you have a book in just a few months. So break it down to, can I just have the discipline or the passion to sit still for half an hour, for an hour, and see what happens with that time. And you'll have a book at the end of it if you really wish to do it. So that's my answer.
Thrity, that was profound when you said, you don't need discipline, you need passion. I think that's my big takeaway today. I mean, not
Okay,
just
good.
not just about books, but uh, that is absolutely true. As
Yeah,
human beings, we will go out of our way, out of our schedule, out of our comfort zone for anything that we are passionate about, and
right.
that's all that you need to drive you, whether it is to write a book, or to go out and go to the gym, or go and
Climb a
study,
mountain.
climb a
Yeah,
mountain, whatever it is.
yeah,
And
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
So it,
I think discipline is vastly overrated,
I
you
agree.
know.
I agree. No,
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. And when you talk about storytelling, then so for an individual, who's probably not as, let's say, well read, such as you are, or eloquent, such as you are, how does one then get down to the business of storytelling? you know Whether it is talking, whether it is writing, whether it is on Twitter or blogs, whatever it is.
Right, right. It's a great question. And to be honest with you, I think it's hard. I think it's hard to be a writer if you are not also a reader.
Yeah.
In the US right now, there's this strange phenomenon going on where everybody wants to write a book and nobody wants to read, you know? And to me, yeah, no, I mean, we joke about it, but there's some element of truth in that, because writing a book has now become, I wouldn't say exactly trendy, but it's like, it's a goal.
Yeah,
Everybody wants
yeah.
to write a book, but nobody wants to put in the time. I mean, going back to the word discipline, I think if there is any discipline in the act of writing, it's the discipline to read. But again, this should be a passion. Like, nobody should hold a gun to your head to make you read. You should want to know, you know, what's happening, what the current literary scene is like, and then also, of course, go back in time and read, what people read a generation ago, 2 centuries ago, whatever. To me, reading and writing are not even two sides of the same coin. They are exactly the same thing. The times when I write the best is when I'm reading a really great book and it inspires me to then want to drop everything else in my life and write, So it's very difficult, in my humble opinion, to be a good writer, to really know what you're talking about without having read.
Sure. And I mean, after so many novels and your memoir as well, clearly you know firsthand the benefits of storytelling in terms of its therapeutic value. Give us maybe
Right.
an anecdote that you have, from your personal experience on that.
Um, I don't know if there's a single anecdote that comes to mind right away, but I have always said that writing basically saves my life every single day. I would be a very grumpy person if I didn't write. And in fact, when I have sort of a lag time between books, where I'm waiting for the next story idea or the next inspiration to hit me, I am a miserable human being to be around. I'm just grumpy as all get out, when during those times. So a friend of mine who's also a writer, I think, put it best. She said, I feel sick when I'm not writing. And there is something to that. I mean, it might be a bit of an exaggeration, but so in that sense, every book that I write helps me in some way. It's always gratifying to hear a reader say, your book did this for me. I mean, I've had people write to me from Brazil and other countries and say, I was in the hospital and they didn't think I was going to make it. And somebody gave me a copy of, such and such of your books. And I read it and it gave me hope. And I wanted to, I've had really profound emails like that, which of course touch your heart, and you begin to think, my God, this is not just fun and games. I mean, this is important work. But if I'm being very, very honest with you, the main reason why I write is for my own mental, spiritual, and emotional health.
That is fantastic, Thrity. On a lighter note, I think your family has your writing to really thank, and make sure that you're not grumpy around for long periods.
Yeah, yeah, right, right. That's exactly right. Yeah, yeah. They like me better when I'm writing. Yeah.
But on that note, we'll bring this session to an end. And thank you so much for some fantastic insights, not just on your book, but into the art and business of writing. and how it can help people. And more
Thank you.
power to your pen, and may you continue to inspire people with your writing. And good
Thank you.
luck.
Thank you, and good luck to everybody watching. And if you have a book in you and a story that you really, really want to tell, now is the time to do it.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.